Welcome back to another episode of My Spoony Sisters podcast, the space where we uplift, educate, and empower those navigating life with chronic illness. I'm excited for today's conversation because we have the incredible guest joining us, someone whose journey is a true testament to resilience, perseverance, and finding purpose beyond a diagnosis. Today, we're sitting down with Steve Lovelace, a devoted father, former traveling salesman, endurance athlete, and passionate advocate. Steve's journey has been anything but easy. Diagnosed in 2014 after an unexplained pain and progressive mobility challenges, he was forced to leave his career and completely redefine his life. But instead of letting the diagnosis define him, Steve chose to fight back with persistence, perseverance, and perspiration. Through endurance sports, journaling, and advocacy, Steve has found ways to not only manage his pain, but also inspire others facing similar challenges. He's currently working on a book about his experience and is on a mission to raise awareness about these often overlooked conditions, bringing much needed attention to the medical community and beyond. In this episode, we'll dive into his journey, from the challenges of daily life with a rare disease to the power of movement, mental health, and finding joy even in the face of adversity. Plus, we'll hear all about his aspirations as an author and speaker and what keeps him pushing forward every single day. Steve, welcome to the My Spoony Sisters podcast. We're super honored to have you here.
I am more than honored, beyond to be here to share my story with you guys. I've listened to some of your podcasts, and I know that you're advocates as well as me. And hopefully, we can share both of our stories. And, if we touch one person out there, that's the difference that making an effort makes. And that's what really counts.
Indeed. We've done a formal introduction, but can you give our guests a little bit of a background of what kickstarted your diagnosis journey and a little bit about your diagnosis?
Sure. My diagnosis of arachnoiditis, which is a rare and extremely painful disease. It's on the chart of painful diseases. It's up there at the very top. I was diagnosed, as you said, in 2014, but the journey before that and really kind of the epicenter of what happened to me was an accident in 1982. I was cutting firewood, tree split in half, did what they call a barber chair. The tree came together on me. The two halves came together on me, instantly paralyzed me from the waist down, crushed my face, bruised my heart, crushed my left wrist, left me just clinging to life at that point in time. That was at least what I think the start of my journey with arachnoiditis. It took many, many years. Obviously, that was 82, and it took up till 2014 when I was diagnosed for me to really realize that something was going on. I started having, as you said, mobility issues. My foot drop got worse. My left leg, which was always my strongest, started to get weaker and weaker. My muscles started to atrophy. I started to lose bowel and bladder function, which was a really big eye opener. Finally, the pain got to the point where I was missing so much sleep at night. I couldn't lay down without being in excruciating pain. I finally went to the doctor. I was afraid to get the diagnosis. It's one of those things where you don't want to know the worst. So I finally just went in to see a neurologist, did an MRI, which is the only way that you can diagnose arachnoiditis. My neurologist came in. This is when I knew I was in for the living hell. He came in and he hung his head, literally just shook it side to side and said, "I'm sorry." It almost brought me to tears because I didn't know what to expect. He said, "You have a disease called arachnoiditis." I'd never heard of it before. I've been in the medical industry for many, many years up to that point. And when he said that there's nothing we can do for you, just give you medication, kind of treat you along that line, but you have to learn to live with it. I asked him, "How many cases have you seen in your career?" He said 5. That's when I knew I was dealing with something relatively rare. Came home immediately, did my Google search on arachnoiditis, and there was very little on the internet back in 2014 that I could find about this disease. Since then, there's been a lot more that has come out that's on the internet. There's a lot of groups on Facebook where you can go and learn, commune with people with the same disease and find out probably more that way about how to deal with what you're going through, how to deal with the pain and some of the small things that the doctors may or may not be able to tell you or have never even thought to tell you about the disease. But I've been through a journey of nearly every pain medication that you can imagine. Got to the point where I was taking so many that I was just basically a zombie that was lying in bed, still thrashing in pain. And I knew that the medication was doing me no good. So I quit them all cold turkey against medical advice. It probably was one of the most difficult things that I've ever been through. That's even comparing it to my accident and my recovery back in 82. Because when your body is revolting from wanting that medication and you're going through those withdrawals and you've been on the medication for so long, and I've been on some of them for about 10 years, it took me at least 3 years before I felt normal again. I kept having recurrences with the medications. Once I got clear of that, life was like one of those commercials where you have this dark screen that shows life with whatever you're dealing with. And then the screen is removed and you have all this clarity. That's when life truly began for me again. And that was probably, 2017, 2018 is when I had that moment of clarity after I got off all the medications. Since then, I've never looked back. I've learned how to deal with my pain. I know that I have good days, I have bad days, and I have survival days. On the good days and the bad days, I take advantage of what my body's capable of doing. So I push myself with my endurance sports, with walking with my forearm crutches. I ride my bike, utilizing my AFOs, ankle foot orthotics, to help stabilize my legs while I'm on the bike. Knowing that if I don't push myself and let myself go, my whole body's going to atrophy and it's going to revolt again. So I push through the pain, but it's those survival days that, I kind of hunker down, and that's when I journal. That's when I read. That's when I watch TV. I do anything that I can to distract myself from the pain because it's so intense. And to describe it, all my pain is in my foot, my right foot on the lateral aspect. When I have the intense pain, it feels like it's in a vice with needles and it's just being cranked on. And then there are times when it feels like I have an ice pick that's shooting straight down the shaft of the toe. It's like a hiccup. It comes and then it goes and then it comes and then it goes. But I know even on those worst survival days, I'm going to be able to get through it. It's not going to kill me. I have learned that I'm good at suffering. I'm really good at taking extreme pain and turning it around, because when it's over, I know that I have to take advantage of those days. Once it's passed, I push myself, and that's kind of my mission in life, is to show people that your small aches and pains are nothing compared to being able to take advantage of life when you don't have those. So, look beyond those bad days and look for those days where you can take advantage.
How did you mentally process receiving the diagnosis that has changed the course of your life? What was that mental acceptance process like for you?
It was tough. It was many, many weeks and months of realizing that I have a rare disease that cannot be cured, that I just have to live and deal with. One of the quotes that I read is from a physician that knows about this disease, said that the difference between having arachnoiditis and having cancer is that death ultimately comes, and sometimes comes quick with cancer, and your suffering is over. Whereas with arachnoiditis, it's not going to kill you. It may shorten your life to a bit, but you're just going to have to endure the pain day in, day out, nonstop, and it can get worse. And once I realized that I had to deal with it, my mental toughness, which is kind of my superpower, just kicked in. And I realized that if I can let the disease choose to guide the direction of my life, or I can take control myself, and I can make the most of it. And I think that I have. I started to journal a lot more and write my book. I started doing sports more, and it's being able to get out and do all that has brought me a bit of attention. I have a small platform that I couldn't realize that if I tell my story and I can inspire people, that's really my purpose. And maybe that's what God's purpose was for me, to put me here with this crazy, horrible disease so that I can show others that life doesn't end when you get this diagnosis. It truly begins again. And once I accepted that, which again took quite some time, that's when my life started over.
What does a typical day look like for you now compared to before your diagnosis?
They're all different. Today, well, let me start with last night. I knew there was a storm moving in. Storms affect my pain. It increases my pain. So springtime is really kind of a tough season for me here in Oklahoma, with all the storms that move through, with all the spring rains. The last night it was up and down, up and down. I slept in a chair because I couldn't lay down in the bed. Numerous times where I knew that, I wasn't going to be able to get back to sleep. So maybe around 4:30, 5 o'clock, I was up making my coffee, scrolling on my phone, got up maybe up and out of my chair around 7 o'clock, got cleaned up and just kind of piddled around the house today. I lifted some weights, which I typically do, some light weightlifting just to keep my body in shape. Made a little lunch, did a couple of chores around the house. I did some dishes, which sometimes I can do it, sometimes I can't. I mean, leaning over the sink to do dishes, it can be kind of a chore. But typically, I try to get out and do a short walk with my golden doodle Shelby. I put her on a tether around my waist, and then, I tool around the block, and something to get my endorphins pulsating through my body, because that's truly my pain medication these days. Lots of TV on the bad days when I can't do anything, a little bit of journaling, but typically if it's a really bad day, on a typical bad day, I'm up, down, lay down, sit, stand, just because you can't find a comfortable position. So, yeah.
I can relate to that. I think the more we're in pain, the more we're up, down, we're all around, because you're constantly trying to find that comfortable sweet spot, right?
Yeah.
And you might find it. It might be 5 minutes. It might be an hour, but it's worth the try.
Yeah. Any small reprieve from pain is a welcome moment. And then when it completely passes and you're to that level where my level of constant pain is around a 5. I hesitate to say that I may be up and down from this chair, all depending, but when I have these conversations, it does take my mind off my pain somewhat, so I can typically get through a good call. But yeah, you look for that sweet spot, and it's very small. It's like a needle in a haystack sometimes.
It's definitely worth it, though. Do you have what I would call a spoony toolkit to manage your unpredictable flare-ups and the impact on your daily routine?
I never really thought about that, but I would say yes to a certain extent. I try to ride my bike. That's been the one thing the one blessing that I have is that when I strap my cycling shoes on and I'm on my bike, no matter how long I ride for, I'm pain-free. Now I'm having one of the absolute worst days. It's hard to even put the shoe on. I can't even let my foot touch the air because it's so sensitive even to the air at times. The minute I take my sock off, I'm just in extreme pain, even on a good day. So needless to say, my socks stay on. That's one way that I tend to cope with that. And then of course, when I'm sitting and I'm in pain and I'm just thrashing, I just tend to, as I said, up and down. I'll pace around the house as much as I can to take my mind off of it, sit down for maybe another 5 or 10 minutes. And those are really the only ways that I can cope with the pain.
Do you feel like there's some socks that are better than others? Does that make a difference for you?
I found the most awesome socks on Amazon this winter. My feet are consistently frozen, but I have great vascular flow. We've done all kinds of peripheral vascular tests, and they come back with great flow, and there's no PAD. So I found these super thick socks, and they're so comfortable. They keep my feet so warm, and it's not like a typical cotton. I wish I could show you. They're just all kind of fuzzy on the inside, twice as thick as a normal sock, and they give me cushion on the bottom of my foot. But more than anything, I think that there's like an air gap with the fluffiness on the inside of the socks that really helps me tremendously. I've tried copper fit socks, hoping that the copper may have. Yeah, these have been a blessing, and I've already purchased a couple more sets because I go through them so quickly.
I felt silly asking you about socks of all things, but I think anyone with chronic pain, we have things like that are our favorites. We have our favorite socks.
Absolutely.
I specifically could use those socks because my feet are always icicles and they hurt because they're cold. And I like a thick sock.
Yeah, they're cheap, but they're awesome. So I'll send you the link.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do they have any kind of compression to them?
Bit, yeah. I've tried compression socks, but they're so hard for me to get on because my feet, I'm basically from the knees down, I'm paralyzed to about 80%. And feeling is pretty much all gone. From the waist down to the knees, it's maybe another 25% gone. So when I'm trying to put a compression sock on, it's really very difficult. I've got several that I've bought over the years, but they're so tight. They just don't really do me any good.
Yeah, my husband's always trying to get me to get compression socks that help my ankles, but I have to explain to him it's not even the ankles. I just like a little bit of like a gentle hug around my feet, if that makes sense. Yeah. I don't know what it is. It just feels good, kind of like compression gloves.
Yeah.
I'm feeling myself. They're very, they're not super tight. My ankles are so skinny, but my ankles are skinnier than my wrists. And I'm not a big guy. I'm 5'7", 140 pounds. So you can imagine how thin my ankle is. It's just literally bone and soft tissue.
So I want to talk a little bit about family and relationships. So you're a dad, and I like when you smile. I say you're a dad and you got a smirk on your face. How have your sons inspired you or supported you on your journey since all of these things have happened? Has been different from them?
I'm sorry. They're the reason that we got off all the medications. They were very young, just now 19 and 17, so still pretty young age-wise. When I knew that I was not the father that I wanted to be with the medications, I knew that I had to quit. They were my motivation. At the time, they really didn't understand what was going on with my diagnosis and with the medications, but they do now. And they see me when I hit my bad days. And the one thing that really comes to mind, I'm recently divorced over the last couple of years. That's a whole other part of the disease and the way that it affects the family. But my kids know that I'm there for them, and I was picking them up from school and dropping them off at their mom's house every day. They were in high school before they could drive. When I get in the car, it's one of the most painful things that I can do because I'm stuck. I can't do anything. I mean, that pain hits, and it's in my right foot, which I use for the gas pedal. I use for the brake. Stepping on the gas pedal is like stepping on broken glass. It's just extremely, extremely painful. And when I had some of those days, my youngest son, they would be sitting in the front, would reach over, gently touch me on the leg, and just tell me that he loved me, that he knows what I'm going through. I mean, that means a lot. The worst thing about this disease, and I will say pretty much with any disease, I could almost say with yours included, not even knowing, but it's worse on everybody else around us than it is on us because we learn how to deal with it on a daily basis. We can never get away from it. And it affects them so much. You know, I've missed way too many family functions because I've had those days where I couldn't get in the car. I couldn't drive an hour. I couldn't sit in uncomfortable places around numerous people watching me go through what I'm going through. I mean, that's my biggest regret with this disease is missing out on that part of life, not being able to be there for all those things that matter the most. But I do know that I have the love and support of my kids. They know what I'm trying to do with my journey now. They support that. And really, if I can do one thing out of this, it's to motivate them to know that they're capable of getting through so much in life and they're capable of doing anything they set their mind to because I've been able to do that. And I'm trying to do that as an example to them.
Hey, listeners, are you living with a chronic illness and want to make your voice heard? Rare Patient Voice connects patients and caregivers with research opportunities so you can share your experiences and get paid for your time. Your insights help drive real change in healthcare. So sign up today using the link in our show notes and start making an impact.
So you've been really open about how your illness has affected your family dynamic. And if you don't mind, I would like to ask, what advice would you give couples navigating chronic illness together?
Just understand that you don't have a perfect marriage anymore. You don't have a perfect union anymore. You're going to be broken together. And if you understand that neither of you are going to be perfect in any given way, more importantly with the disease and how that's going to impact you, just to understand that, you know, it doesn't have to be an eye roll on the third consecutive Christmas that you miss because you can't make it because of the disease. It can be as simple as a hug. And I understand. And what with our technology today, we'll FaceTime you and you'll be there virtually. You can add that type of layer to your family unit. But really, it's just understanding and the compassion, not necessarily asking how you're doing on any given day. Maybe on your worst day, but when they see you suffer, they don't have to always come in and say, how are you doing? Is there anything I can get for you? Because if you need something, let them know, what, when I need something, I'll ask.
Yeah.
But you don't have to constantly be a safety net for me. Just knowing that you're there, that you love, that you're compassionate and that you care, that matters most.
What do you wish that people understood the most about how chronic illness affects not just the individual, but the family dynamic? What do you wish people knew more about?
You just have to give yourself time to deal with learning how to make life happen with whatever disease or whatever condition that you have. You're not going to get it all up front. You may not ever get it, but you have to try. You have to try to formulate a new life around your diagnosis, but it doesn't have to be central to the life that you have. It just has to be a part of it. And you have to acknowledge that. The worst thing that you can do is not acknowledging that you have something and that it's going to affect you. And that's when anger sets in. And that's when I like to say, I've come up with this term called an emotional dam, where if you hold everything in and you hold everything back, that dam can only hold back so much, and eventually it's going to break. And when it breaks, that's when you lash out. And you know what? Sometimes that's going to happen. Give whoever is going through it, give them their 5 minutes to go out in the backyard and yell at the top of their lungs. You know, it's not at you. It's not at anybody in particular. And sometimes when that lashing out happens, people really have to be understanding, but just acknowledging that, you know, you're in the pit of despair at times and that, you know, you're going to get through it with the help of those around you. I think that matters most, to be able to deal with it and just, you know, get on with your daily life.
What personal mantra or mindset shift has helped you push through your tough times?
I came up with this saying with my kids a long time ago: don't say I can't, say I'll try. And that pretty much is my mantra for everything. I'm currently training to do a quarter marathon at the Oklahoma City Memorial Marathon with forearm crutches. There's, you know, and I researched, you know, who has done this, and there's a guy online that does it with walking staffs, but not necessarily forearm crutches. But I like to push my boundaries, and I like to find new areas that, you know, have never been done, just to prove to myself that, you know what, despite not being able to balance myself without my forearm crutches, I'm going to go the distance, and just pushing every boundary that I can. Did it with triathlon. I do it with cycling. I'm doing it with my forearm crutches. And last year is my first 5K in many, many decades. And I used to run a 6-minute mile consistently. Now I'm at 22. It's not a point of shame as much as it's, you know what, 22 is the new PR for me. And I can go out there and try to do 21:50. But it's just, you know, pushing those boundaries, because life is not limiting me. It's opening more doors for me now than it ever has.
So that's a great segue. How was that transition into sports from high impact activities to finding new ways to stay active, to still enjoy the things and get some pain relief? Can we talk a little bit about how that transition was?
Yeah, it was right before my diagnosis. I'd always been a athlete my entire life, even after my accident in '82. I ended up doing triathlon 3 years after, and that's when I became that second disabled athlete to have ever completed a triathlon back then. So made me a pioneer in sports. I continued to do that up until the point when I got married and had kids. And that's when life kind of throws you a curveball. Time gets limited. You know, you focus on family. I was traveling a lot with my work, but it wasn't until I started feeling the first inkling of arachnoiditis, which was I just had this stabbing pain in my foot that was there constantly for a week, very intense. Then it went away for a couple of months, and then it came back. And again, it's kind of like hiccups. Through all that, I just kept looking at my body. My legs started to atrophy, my balance started to get worse. And so I thought, I've been sitting on the sideline too long. I need to go push myself. So I dusted off my old bike. I got it tuned up and started riding with my son. And you're talking a guy that used to ride 40, 50, 60 miles a day. That was, you know, back in the day, nothing to me. I get back on this bike after being sedentary for so long. I do a half mile. My heart rate's at 150 and I'm out of breath. I'm like, this is not me. You know, this is not the guy that I was and the guy that I want to be. I just slowly continued to push myself and found that the exercise really started to benefit me. You know, I was preventing the muscles from atrophy. I was strengthening myself up. And more importantly, I was strengthening my cardiovascular system, trying to keep my heart strong. And so now, you know, I'm back on the bike for an hour or two a day. Not every day, but most days I try to get on the trainer, or I'll go out for a good leisurely ride. I'll walk my doodle when I have the ability to go out and walk, and we'll do, 45 minutes or an hour. And it's not that I'm completely pain free. My back, when I had my accident, I've got 3 crushed vertebrae that were fused. So there's a significant amount of pain with that. There's definitely pain when I walk with my foot. I'm not pain free when I'm standing. That's 100%. But again, I continue to push myself, and it's the 30 minutes or the hour after I get done exercising that I feel awesome. But that's what keeps me going, is knowing that I'm going to have that feeling afterwards, and knowing that I prevented my body from going 2 steps backward. I pushed it 1 step forward with my effort, and I continue to maintain myself. And cardiovascular heart says that I'm a 50-year-old. I'll be 63 this year. So it's obviously doing me some good.
Steve, what advice would you give to others with mobility challenges who want to stay active?
I go back to that. Don't say I can't, say I'll try. Too many people that are in a wheelchair or have forearm crutches or use canes, that's an excuse not to do something. I would say the vast majority of people, that's an excuse to sit on the sidelines and say, I can't because. Say, I'll try. I didn't think that I could do a 5K with forearm crutches, yet I did it. And the reason I did it is because it was a challenge. I just wanted to push my boundary. And the ironic thing is, I was one of 2 people that day that did that 5K with forearm crutches. And I did my best to try to catch up with that little gal that was in front of me. My sister was walking with me. I said, let's try to catch up, because I want to get side by side with this person and say, you're inspiring me as much as I hope I'm inspiring those around me. But and she found me after the fact, after the race was over, and said that she knew me. And that was, quite a big thing for me. But, whether it's forearm crutches, the wheelchair, when I'm in a wheelchair, you can bet that I'll be racing in a wheelchair. If I was laying on my belly on a belly cart, which I was in the hospital back in the 80s, I raced with the belly cart. The belly cart is, but it's basically a wheelchair that is a gurney, and you lay on your stomach and you wheel it just like you would a regular wheelchair. I did that, was in the wheelchair or on the belly cart in the rehab center. I used to just scream up and down the hallways, and the nurses would come at me and say, Mr. Lovelace, you have to stop. You're going to hurt yourself. I'm like, no worse than what got me here in the first place. So let me push myself. I could honestly, back in the day, do a wheelie with that belly cart. I might get the wheels up, 2 or 3 inches, but that was my challenge. I would say, if you don't think you can, look to others for inspiration and ask questions. I went from using no mobility aids to using a staff to using forearm crutches. Now I use a wheelchair, but I still ride my bike. I still walk. I can't run anymore, but if I could figure out a way to run, trust me, I would do it. But I do have a racing wheelchair in my shed for the day when I can no longer ambulate or ride my bike. I will be racing a wheelchair and racing a hand crank bike.
Steve, what are some misconceptions about AA and CES that you want to correct?
Living with a rare disease or chronic illness can feel isolating, but you are not alone. Find Your Rare is more than just a brand. It's a movement. From empowering apparel to real, raw conversations, they're here to remind you that your story matters. Because being rare, it's your superpower. Explore, join, and wear your rare with pride at findyourrare.com.
Life doesn't end after the diagnosis. Life truly begins once you figure out how to live with it. Some bodies are just susceptible to the disease and that cascade of it happening because it's an autoimmune disease. And once you have one autoimmune disease, you're pretty much prone to others, unfortunately.
If there was one thing that you could change about how the medical community approaches your disease, what would it be?
I think every physician, every frontline physician, whether it's an orthopedic surgeon, which is probably going to know more about this than anybody, or neurosurgeon or neurologist. But I think your primary care physicians all need to know that if somebody comes in with pain in their lower extremities and it's an electric shock type pain and it comes and it goes, it intensifies with standing or with laying down, feels like water running down your legs, or, it's something along that line. Or with respect to CES, if they're having bladder control issues or bowel issues or numbness in the saddle area, they need to get an MRI. That's the only way that you can diagnose this. I was reading in RP magazine the other day. It was a multi-page story about this lady that had this pain in her leg after back surgery, and she started to lose function, lose feeling, and went in and they diagnosed it as failed back syndrome. And that's really kind of a fallback diagnosis to anybody that has back pain or lower extremity pain after back surgery. Oh, you've got failed back syndrome. It's just something you're going to have to deal with. Why not do an MRI and get a definitive diagnosis? Because the quicker you catch CES can be reversed if you catch it quick enough, because it's basically compression on the nerves. Arachnoiditis can't be reversed once diagnosed early. There are methods to deal with it that, I got caught in the late stages of it. I was kind of at the extreme end, and there was really not much that they could do for me. But there are treatments that they can give that do help. They kind of slow down the progression of the disease. But if we could acknowledge this to the frontline physicians, the primary care people that most people are going to see first off, and if that's the one thing that they can come away with to go get that diagnosis early, that would be the thing that I would.
I have another question, because you piqued my curiosity. While you were going through your diagnosis journey, were you originally being treated for neuropathy?
Yes. Yeah. Gabapentin. Did nothing for me.
And so I would imagine, because for that class of drugs, the gabapentin, the Lyricas, it can either make you hypersensitive or dull the nerve. And in your case, did it make you hypersensitive even more so to the pain receptor than you were?
If I think back retrospectively, it's kind of hard for me to recall, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I do know that I was on it for, I think I was on 1,800 milligrams a day. So a very large dose. Yeah. And it initially turned me into a zombie. Again, that was one of the drugs that I quit cold turkey. I just kept taking it, and it did nothing for my pain. When I stopped taking it, pain was still there at the same level that it was when I was on the medication. So all I was doing was just putting chemicals through my liver and into my body that I didn't need, sadly. But yeah, neuropathy, good, easy diagnosis for somebody that feels that tingling in their foot. But again, the deeper diagnosis would be to get an MRI, not necessarily diagnose it as neuropathy, but get a definitive diagnosis as to whether or not it is arachnoiditis or Arachnoiditis syndrome.
How can people support research for both of those?
There's some research. There's the last research or study that was done was maybe more than a decade ago, and it was using a drug called thalidomide, which is the drug that people are born. Well, they gave it to women back in the 50s and 60s for morning sickness. And all of a sudden you had babies born with very small limbs or no limbs at all. Really, it was a horrible, horrible drug. But apparently it had some sort of medical interest to somebody, and they did a study with it. I don't think it went anywhere. I've been on the NIH website looking for studies for arachnoiditis and even neuropathy, but honestly, since there's not a cure and the pain medication are so prevalent, that's really the diagnosis equals an open pharmacy to any kind of pain medication that you could ever imagine, which is fine. I mean, I had a pain medication doctor I saw him twice. I stopped seeing him the second time because he said, we'll just keep throwing drugs at you until they stick. I'm like, that's no way to practice medicine. I'm here not for you being a dispensary of medications. And at the time I smoked medical marijuana, which is legal here in Oklahoma. And that helped kind of take the edge off. I mean, if I could say it anyway, if my pain is like a spike, it rounds the spike off. The pain's still there. It's just not as sharp, but it did help. He said, you're going to have to stop that while you're taking this. And I said, well, this is working for me. That's not. So, what's the deal? And I think part of that was just they wanted to drug test and get their money from that. They wanted me to come in once a month for the drug test. They wanted me to come in once a month for that appointment money. And they wanted to kick back from the pharmacy or the rep for the medication. And I've been on the inside of the medical industry. I know how it works, and it's worth. Back in the day, it used to be so corrupt. It's a little more upfront now, where physicians have to acknowledge how much money they get from a specific company on the company's website because it's a kickback. And it's not right for the patient. Their advocacy is for the medication, not the patient, in my opinion. If anybody wants to do anything with research, I would be happy to donate my body to science. I'm already donating my brain to the CTE when I'm dead. I've had many head injuries, and I know that there's probably some chronic traumatic encephalopathy going on there. But yeah, we need research in this area.
So you're writing a book, and I want to talk about that. What has that process been like for you? Me writing my book was very therapeutic. It was very therapeutic. So how's it been for you?
Well, that's how it started for me, was therapy. I mean, writing is very cathartic, putting down your word. But I will say that the most difficult thing to me is me being honest with myself as I write the book. Mm-hmm. Because there's so much to my story, so much before my accident, so much after my accident, so much after my diagnosis. It's hard to know what to focus on. It's hard to really dial into, the central story, which my central story is the accident that nearly killed me, paralyzed me for a period of time. And then I defiantly told the doctors I'm walking out of the hospital after they told me that I'd never walk again. I did walk out of the hospital. I took 4 steps with crutches. I proved them all wrong. I went on to make history in sports. I'm writing about that aspect. But it's when you write, and you'll notice, you expose yourself to the world. Mm-hmm. You expose your story, you expose yourself to criticism, naysayers. Most of what I'm going to write, people are going to go, he didn't do that, or creative license, with the way I tell the story. When I say I grew up poor and my father abandoned our family when I was 4, and my mother struggled in the 60s to raise 2 kids on her own with no help from them. And there were days where my mom tells this story how my sister only got $5 for Christmas one year from my grandparents. And we knew that mom was struggling to put food on the table. And she heard us talking through my sister's door about what we could each do with our $5 to buy groceries, to buy hamburger, because mom could do a lot with hamburger. We could buy eggs because we can eat eggs for dinner and we can eat eggs for breakfast. And that's how poor we were. There was typically more space in our cabinets than there was food when I was growing up. So I can tell that story. But again, the neighborhood that we grew up in, which was a nice, nuclear family neighborhood, we were one of a few families on the block that didn't have a father. And, that was a significant impact for me. And I can touch on so many different things with my book and my stories. But yeah, it's hard to know what to focus on and where to start, where to end, how much detail to put into this, that, and the other. But yeah, it is therapeutic. I'm going back over old memories that have long since been forgotten. Some of them bring tears to my eyes, in a good way and a bad way.
Yeah. So you said that you wanted to do some motivational speaking. What do you hope to achieve with that? And have you started? Are we doing speaking engagements?
I did my first at the University of Oklahoma Health Sciences Center, which is my alma mater. It was a year and a half ago, and it was a huge honor for me because it was one of the professors that I had studied under. Gave my speech. I told my story. And the great thing about this story is that I shouldn't have been in the program that I graduated from. My grades were horrible, but somehow this lady saw potential in me. And I told her during the interview process, if you give me an opportunity, I promise I won't let you down. I graduated at the top of my class, not at the very top, but I was in the top of my class. She gave me that opportunity. And when I told that story under her lectureship, and several people came up to me after the fact and just tell me how moving my story was to them. And one young girl said that she had been training for the marathon at the Oklahoma City Memorial. And this gave her more inspiration to want to go do that race, just hearing my story and knowing that you're fully capable of doing anything. So that's really the gist of my story is don't give up, don't give in, go forward and find something difficult to do, because that's when you really discover most about yourself, is during the difficult times.
I have one more serious question before we put you in the hot seat for the Fast Five. Okay. The Fast Five is all fun questions. Notice how I did the series of F words, Jen. Fast Five, fun. Okay. So the last serious question though is, where do you see yourself in the next 5 years?
I see myself on stage a lot. Mm-hmm. I see myself signing my book for people, and not for self-recognition as much as I want those same conversations. I want people to come up to me and say, your story inspired me to do this. That's what, if I can say all the suffering was worth one person coming up to me saying that they're inspired by my story, that's truly worth it to me. That's the price that I paid going through everything that I go through, to hear that. But it's not for self-recognition or, a pat on the back. I definitely see myself out there telling my story, motivating, the masses, because it is, even from my point of view, a moving story. I definitely want that to take place. And I think, with my persistence, perseverance, and perspiration, I will make that happen.
Tell us a little bit about your golden doodle, Shelby. How does she bring joy to your life?
She's so awesome. She follows me pretty much everywhere I go. I can't go out the door without her scratching it if I close it behind her. The funny thing about this dog is that I have home health that comes in 3 times a week. They're working on that, but also that we're trying to heal up for the past couple of years. She absolutely loves my nurse. My nurse loves her. I have a new wound care team that comes in. It's a male and a female. They tag team, and they love Shelby and Shelby loves them. In fact, I live on a property that's an 1.25 acres, and she's got an underground collar that she can wear to kind of keep her in the perimeter. But she tends to do what I call go off-roading, where she is kind of a social butterfly. And she'll go over and see the neighbor's dogs, and my neighbor's dogs come over and see Shelby. And it's just, we have such a great neighborhood. But for me personally, because I have PTSD, on my bad days, she's right under my feet. It's like she senses and she knows. And one of the things that they tell you with this disease is if you have a pet, stroke your pet, pet on your pet for half an hour or more a day, because that is therapeutic. That helps relieve your stress. It's very calming for you and for them. She's just my constant companion. She's a 70-pound lap dog, I like to say. Up and down on the furniture, that doesn't bother me at all. I just want my girl near me. Living alone for so long, it was comforting to have her here with me. She's not the perfect dog, but she's perfect for me. I think that's really all that matters.
I love it.
Shelby sounds like the whole vibe for like the whole neighborhood. She sounds like a therapy dog for the entire neighborhood. I love that. I love that for you. I love that for your neighbors. I love that for your care team. I love that for Shelby.
One last story about the dogs. In the fall, my neighbors to the north of me have 2 dogs, Summer and Tilly. And in the fall, I'll be watching football. I'll have my back door open to where Shelby can go in and out. Neighbors will go to a football game and I'll be watching the dogs. And all of a sudden, the dogs just come walking in, sit at my feet, and we're watching football. And at one point in time, I thought I was going to end up selling my house. I said, you're going to have to tell the new neighbors that move in that if they leave their door open, they may have an unwanted guest come in, but eventually they'll learn to love these girls. Yeah, they absolutely love. When I say, let's go see Summer or Tilly Bell, she gets her tail wagging and we go over and they have fun. That's your playtime.
If you could go back and talk to young Steve before all of life happened and Steve got his diagnosis and give young Steve some advice about the future, what advice would you give young you about the future?
I would pay more attention to my education. I was not the best student when I was going to elementary and high school. A lot of that had to do with some of the trauma that I went through as a kid. Ended up living in a couple of different households when I was younger. So I suffered through some abandonment issues and I was never the best student. But once I got my wheels up underneath me, I hit college. I put myself through college. I was the first to graduate in my family. My grades turned around. And the last 3 years of my college career, I don't think I ended up with anything less than an A or a B. So, I finally figured that out. And I wish I would have figured it out sooner because I probably would have gone deeper into medicine. At one time, I thought I might have wanted to be a PA or a physician, just because I love that aspect of the human body and treating people.
Okay, this one's a fun one. What's your ultimate pizza topping combo?
That's it. There used to be a pizza place called Ken's here in Oklahoma City or in Oklahoma, and they have a spicy sauce. You can't put any topping on that is not good. I mean, a spicy pizza sauce is awesome. I was talking to my mom about this the other day because she loves pizza. In fact, when I was in the hospital, there was a sign that said, somebody please bring a pizza to my room. But the sad thing was my mouth was wired shut, so I couldn't have eaten it. I love pepperoni. I love jalapenos and I love mushrooms. I mean, you can throw that on there. And of course, a good dose of cheese. You got to have the stringy cheese when you pull that. But yeah, that's probably my favorite. Now I have had deep dishes Chicago at Uno's, which is good, but I'm more of a thin crust kind of guy. But yeah, gotta hit my pepperoni.
Thin and crunchy all the way.
Yeah.
I'm from Chicago, so the deep dish, the Chicago style pizza, I get it. It's a lot of cheese. It is a lot of cheese right in your mouth, right up front, right away, in reverse pizza. But just watching you describe the pizza, like you were glowing. I could tell your love for pizza, and I was getting excited. I was like, he talks about food like I talk about food. You got happy. I love pizza. I also love pizza.
Thanks to the...
It's a real thing. I will be getting pizza today. I will be having pizza today. So humor me. If you could sit down with any historical figure or inspiring person for coffee and you only get 10 minutes, who are you sitting down with? What are you talking about and why?
I was asked this question in sociology in college, and I go back to the same guy, Abraham Lincoln. Yeah, I think having a coffee with that guy, I mean, he grew up in the middle of nowhere. He studied by candlelight. He became a lawyer, the backwoods of Illinois. And I would just want to know what motivated him to do what he did and to, want to be president, because the guy made such an impact for our country. I would want to talk to him. He just was such a historic figure for our country. And mainly just to see how tall he really was.
They said he was he 7 feet?
He was very tall. I know that I've seen pictures, historical pictures, where he's towering over everybody. And then he's still on the stovepipe hat, which even elevated him that much more. So, yeah. And I'm 5'7", so I know I'd be looking at him.
I'm 5'2" on a good day, so I can only imagine. He just has to look like a tower of a man.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's clear. That's 2 feet easy, taller than me, because I'm, foot. It's a foot, a full foot, but I'm going to say 2 feet. Because they won't give me 6 feet. They will only give me 5'11 3/4. And so I will take the 5'11 3/4.
I could probably eke out another 1/8 of an inch, 5'7" and an inch with my socks.
Steve, it was a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to be here and talk to you. I don't get out of the house much. So when I get the opportunities to do these interviews, it really elevates me. My mind has been off my foot the entire time. I still feel it, still hurting. But these distractions are, the small joys that I get in life. And this will impact me for the rest of the month, if not further down the line.
Yay. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, Spoonies, until next time. Don't forget your spoon. All guests featured or mentioned in this podcast will be listed for your convenience. Don't forget to rate and subscribe to My Spoonie Sisters and follow My Spoonie Sisters on Instagram for updates on new episodes and more. We eagerly look forward to speaking and hearing from all our Spoonies. Disclaimer: while we are not doctors or healthcare practitioners, we want to assure you that this podcast is a credible source of information. It's based on our guests' personal experiences and the strategies we've found effective for ourselves. However, everyone's body is unique, and what works for one person may not work for another. If you have any health-related questions, it's always best to consult your primary doctor or rheumatologist. Remember, our goal at My Spoonie Sisters is to connect people and provide them with the support and tools they need to live better lives.